Pregame.com.
I'm Vegas Runner, here with Scott Spreitzer, breaking down our first Major League Baseball game of the season. It's a big one for April. Texas Rangers at Detroit Tigers. We're breaking down Sunday's game. It'll be the fourth of the series that starts tonight. Pitching matchup expected to be Colby Lewis against Drew Smyly. I say Texas will be favored in that game, small road favorite. Obviously, it's going to depend on what happens over these next 3 days.
Sure.
But just the pitching matchup alone, and we know most lines are more or less factored based on starting pitching,
right,
because that's what most recreational bettors bet. They bet starting pitchers, not teams. Odds makers know this, so they kind of create those numbers based on starting pitching, even though today's starters go 5.5 innings.
Sparky Anderson's changed everything.
Exactly. So I think we'll see Colby Lewis, the way he's pitching, 2-0 this season, 19 innings pitched. The guy struck out 22 batters, walked only one. With that kind of ratio, you're going to be favored over anybody. I don't think it'll be a problem making him the favorite against Detroit, even though, surprisingly, in the American League, year after year, it's talking about the American League East. Yankees, Boston.
Sure.
Of late, it's all about the Texas Rangers. And now, with Detroit, their addition of Fielder, all of a sudden, they're major players as well. And these are two teams that should very well meet when the fall gets here. And it was last year that Nelson Cruz actually single-handedly destroyed Detroit in that playoff series. And
he's not even hitting well yet.
Exactly. And Texas
thing.
went on to win the World Series.
Right.
So just setting the stage for you here, left-handed pitcher in Smyly. I know you were telling me before we went on camera, historically, Texas has not done well against lefties. This year's been a different story.
Lefties on the road, and the thing was like last year on the road against left-handers, they only averaged about 3.96 runs per game.
Compared to 8.7 this year. But small sample size, 3 games.
Well, yeah, and of course I look at who they've played, and they've really caught bad teams at the right time. You know, Boston's a shell of what they were at the start of last year. I know they had a bad start last year, but roster-wise, lineup-wise, guys who are healthy,
I agree.
Much better team last year than they are this year. But as far as Texas is concerned going to this game, one of the first things I was going to talk about, you hit right on the head, was, last year at this time, people were talking about Colby Lewis and his velocity dropping. And his strikeout rate went down last year. And so it was like, what's going to happen in the offseason? Is Lewis going to be as effective this year?
Right.
22 punch-outs, as you mentioned, one walk and about 19 and 2/3 innings pitched. I'd say his velocity is looking pretty good right now, which is a good thing for him. Through his first 3 starts, he's got a 2.31 FIP. That's going to go up. I don't care how good you are, that's going to go up. His ERA is about 183 right now through his first 3 starts. But I mentioned his velocity level going well. The fact that he's getting guys to swing and miss is a good deal going into this game if you're going to back Texas, because he's been so horribly bad against the Detroit Tigers. In fact, his last 3 years, he's had 5 starts against Detroit. He's given up 23 earned runs, 51 base runners in 26 and 2/3 innings. It's a 7.76 ERA, 191 WHIP, and a 336 batting average against, and that was before Prince Fielder came along to Detroit. So he's got to narrow down those numbers. Now he's pitching, again, much better with his control. His fastball looks like it's jumping a little bit again like it did a couple years ago,
and run
as opposed to last year.
Hurt.
The run support is sick. It's funny, we were talking before we started shooting the thing here, and I said, over the last 4 games going into Thursday, you got Josh Hamilton hitting 6-11, 3 homers, 9 ribbies. You got Michael Young, who going into Thursday was a little bit banged up, but he was upgraded Thursday afternoon and expected to play Thursday night. 6-game hit streak. He's hitting .520, 2 homers, 8 RBI. Just seems like the never-aging Michael Young. So everything that's going right now is going right for the Texas Rangers. And now they go up against Drew Smyly. Young guy, left-hander, big guy. The problem with Smyly at times, he's a 3-pitch pitcher as far as his repertoire is concerned, but he's got 2 fastballs. He's got one, a 4-seamer that goes about 92 miles an hour tops. He's got a nice cutter that goes about 85 in the mid-80s, right around there. But in that repertoire, he's got one problem. He's got a curveball and a changeup. The changeup is okay. The curveball sometimes can get ugly. It's a big looping curveball, and it hasn't had the greatest break to it in a little bit I've watched of him so far this season. If he doesn't have break to a big looping curveball against the Texas Rangers, guess what happens? I mean, it could be ugly. So you do have that one caveat if you're going to back the home team in this one, and that Smiley, plus he might only get 5 innings. You never know. They might decide, you know what, he's thrown 90 pitches. Let's take him out of here. He only threw, I think, 4 1/3 in his first outing. A little more action in his second outing. But the bottom line is if he is, he might be winning this game in the 5th inning, 4-3, 5-4, something like that. But he might throw enough pitches to where, Leland says, we're going to give this kid a break. He's done well for us through the 5 innings, gives up 3 earned runs or something like that. We're going to sit him down, and then it comes about that Detroit bullpen. But as you mentioned, man, these two teams, you're talking about the second and third best hitting teams in Major League Baseball going into Thursday's contest. So I'm just looking forward all weekend long to watching these two teams battle it out.
I can't wait either. And I'll be blunt. I like this Texas team a lot. I don't expect them to win at this high of a percentage. It just doesn't happen. We know historically the top teams in baseball win between 58 and 60%. I mean, if you win 60% of your games, it's a record season.
Right.
That's so rare. It's usually right around there, 58, 59%, you win the division. So obviously this isn't going to continue. But what I like about Texas is they're 5-0 on the road. So they're getting it done at home. They're getting it done on the road. And even though it won't continue, this is a team right now that's not just focused, but they seem driven. I think the best thing that happened to Texas coming off that World Series debacle, to call it what you will, is the fact that the Angels went out, grabbed Pujols. That woke everybody up, saying this team's trying to overtake us in the division. So here's a club that came in focused, not with a hangover from last year. And I think it's going to take a little while before they cool off. What I like to look at is, and fortunately, we're in the internet age and information's readily available. You don't have to be a math wizard from MIT to gather information. And I like to look at the Pythagorean over-under in wins. If at the end of the season, they run this Pythagorean system based on runs scored, runs allowed, and it shows what a team should have won compared to how many games they did win. And it's a great way to gauge whether a team's over or underperforming. Right now, both of these teams, according to that stat, they're both overperforming. In other words, Texas shouldn't be 10-2 based on their stats. Detroit shouldn't be 9-3 based on their stats. So because of the fact we have two teams overperforming, I'd rather go with the better team here, and I think Texas is the better team. If it was on the flip side and Detroit was maybe underperforming and Texas overperforming, then we might have some value based on regression and progression to the mean. But that's not the case here. We have a situation where both teams should regress. But in this spot, I think a motivated team like Texas against a pitcher like Smiley with not all that much experience, I got to give the edge to Texas. They have the edge in starting pitching with Colby Lewis. They got the edge in bats, I believe. Look at that lineup. I don't even need to run off the names. And then they have an edge in their bullpen. Their bullpen has a whip below 1.0. I mean,
everything's
every
working perfectly right
facet
now.
of the game, they're dominating. So there's no reason for me not to jump on this team and keep riding them until they start fading off. It might look like the square play, and eventually the market will catch up to it. The value will be gone. But right now, I've learned one thing betting sports. You bet streaks. You don't bet streaks to end. Biggest reason you could cash 5-6 tickets betting on streaks. You can only cash one betting against streaks because if you cash it, the streak ended.
The teams in a funk are more likely to make that costly play, where teams that are on fire, they're so relaxed at the plate. The ball looks like a beach ball when it's being thrown at them. They make the plays and they go after the plays. They play with a controlled aggressiveness when they're on a win streak. You're the man right now in baseball. I mean, I follow about 10 to 12 guys. You're the hottest one of the bunch out of the blocks, and you've been tearing it up. So I'm listening to you on this game. I will mention one more thing. And
what did you like in this game?
Well, I'm going to kind of wait and see what happens the first 3 games. I know that's, and I'll post on I'll tell you what, we'll do what we did last week at the NBA. I did an NBA forum with Marco, and I mentioned we were about 3 days behind the actual game when we did the video, and I said, check out the night before, and I'll tell you on that night on the forum.
Especially in baseball with series. These teams play each other 3-4 times.
And I mentioned that I would put out on the forum whether I was on that team or not. And I'm going to do the same thing here. On Saturday night, early Sunday morning, 2 a.m. Pacific time at the latest, 5 a.m. Eastern, I'll give out whether I'm going to be on one of these sides or not. We're not going to sell it. We'll give it out on the forum. But I lean towards Texas right now. We're going to see what happens in the series. Also, I wanted to mention real quickly, and we got to go back and we got to be honest with everything we do, as we are over the 20 years of handicapping. And the bottom line is, I said on a preview that we did here at the forum that I thought the Angels would edge the Rangers. Told Brian Leonard I didn't want to make a living off of it, but I thought they would edge the Rangers as far as the season-long record at the end of the
That's
regular
still
season.
early,
Well,
man.
no, I was going to say it's still early, and I was going to say the Angels are doing some weird stuff right now. Socha, 9 different lineups in 12 games. Trumbo's not up yet. For whatever reason, they're saying it's illness. We hope he's back. Scott Downs has been injured from the start, just coming back, messes with the bullpen. But the bottom line is right now is that the Texas Rangers are on such a run, as you just mentioned, that you either play a team like that or you stay away from them in most instances. And the thing that makes me say that I'm either going to be on Texas on the forums on Saturday night, Sunday morning, or on nothing is because I cannot trust. I don't care if the value looks like it's there in the line. Personally, I cannot trust Drew Smyly's curveball against this lineup. He might come out and have a career day. He might throw 7 innings of shutout baseball, but I'm not going to be on him. It's Texas or nothing. And I don't fault a handicapper who finds enough reasons to take Detroit in this one because Detroit's a very good baseball
And
team.
anytime you could get a home dog in baseball, it's a good
but
bet.
for me, I do matchups more than anything else. I cannot back Smyly in this in this situation because of that potential looping curveball getting drilled.
Yeah, and like I said, I like Texas. It's going to come down to the situation on that day because if they rest players that final game of the series a lot of times. So there's a lot of angles. But right now going in, I like Texas. Don't forget I did a podcast with Gil Alexander, gave out my futures of the year for baseball, who's going to win the World Series. You can get that at pregame.com. Also go to pregame forums. Check out all of the videos all in one thread. That's pregamevideos.com. You'll get all our notes along with conversation on these games. Let us know what you think. Baseball's finally here. Long couple months ahead. You guys have a great one. Enjoy your weekend. Cash some tickets.